अस्सलामुअलैकुम। कैसे हैं आप सब लोग? ठीक ठाक हैं? उम्मीद करता हूँ सब लोग ठीक ठाक होंगे, अल्लाह के फजलो करम से खुशबाश होंगे जी। आज के व्लॉग में हम लोग जो है वो छोटी सी डॉक्यूमेंट्री देखेंगे गोल्ड के ऊपर। तो मैंने तो खूब इंजॉय किया है, उम्मीद करता हूँ आप भी इंजॉय करेंगे। तो मेरे साथ रहिएगा, सब्सक्राइब, शेयर और लाइक करना ना भूलिएगा। तो चलते हैं, डॉक्यूमेंट्री देखते हैं। तो मेरे साथ रहिएगा, उम्मीद करता हूँ खूब इंजॉय करेंगे हम सब लोग।
Siemi qualite e si sui ni somshaba Ribanna Baribiti Riatumma Ribilioni Riatumma Ribilioni Riatumma Ribilioni Ribanna Baribiti Riatumma Ribilioni Riatumma Ribilioni
You think you found some gold there, son?
Maybe, maybe not. What's it to you?
You youngsters sure have found some attitude since my day. Aren't you back in the 1880s? If that was gold you found, you'd have needed all that attitude just to hold on to it.
The 1880s? That's almost about 120 years ago.
1886 to be exact. And right now, you're doing exactly what those first prospectors did. Panning and sweating, desperate for that first glimpse of gold.
But look, I already found some.
What's your name, son?
Veli, what's yours?
You can call me Joe. Careful, Betty. You catch that gold fever, it'll hold you in its claws for the rest of your life. Nothing more beautiful than gold. Nothing more dangerous either. So, you want to go on an adventure? Let me take you back. Back to the days when men poured onto this barren highveld. Poured into these gold fields like ore into a crusher.
Why do I need to go all that way back?
To understand what it was like back then, son. If you don't understand the past, how do you know how you got here? How will you know where you're going? The discovery of gold was big, son. The biggest ever in the history of the world. The gold reef stretched all the way from where Heidelberg is today, up through Johannesburg and Roodepoort, and then south as far as Virginia and the Free State. Back then, a country measured its wealth and determined the strength of their currency by the amount of gold they had. The discovery of gold here on the Witwatersrand meant people and governments the world over were ready and willing to buy it. But the fact is, really, when the gold here was first discovered, it was thin traces in the conglomerate in the outcrops that stuck out above the rocky plain. Some say a prospector called George Harrison was the first to find it on the farm Langlaagte in February 1886. Others say George Walker and George Honeyball were the first. And then there were the brothers Fred and Harry Struben, who also played a major role in establishing the location of the main reef. That argument is still going on today.
So there was nothing here, just felt and rocks.
Just felt and rocks, son. And poor farmers, and even poorer prospectors. But once the early conglomerate samples were crushed and assayed by the established diamond mines in Kimberley, then everyone realized there was gold here for the taking. But first, the prospectors had to buy pieces of land from the existing farmers. That's a big part of a gold rush, son. The rush to get the rights to the land, to stake your claim.
So I staked my claim. What do I do then?
You started mining, son. Getting that gold out of the ground. It all officially started in September 1886, when the government first proclaimed the gold fields. That was the birth of the South African gold mining industry. That proclamation changed the future of South Africa forever.
So why did it change things so much?
The land was largely uninhabited back then, just a scattering of farmers. But when the people heard about the gold, they started arriving in their hundreds, then thousands, and they all needed a place to stay, food in their stomachs. Their hunger for the gold built the city, son. Back then, this area fell under the control of the old South African Republic under President Paul Kruger. Here's an interesting thing, son. In 1886, Joburg only had about 2,500 inhabitants. Some folks insist Johannesburg was named after our rock-hard camp superintendent, Veldkornet Johannes Petrus Meyer. Other folks still swear it was after one of President Kruger's second names, Johannes. And then, of course, there was Johannes, acting Surveyor General, and Volksraad member Christian Johannes Hubert, who eventually proclaimed the new city. Well, they definitely named it Johannesburg. It's just a question of after which Johann or Johannes.
So which one was it, Joe?
Who knows? The thing was, if you chucked a stone in Joburg back then, chances are you'd have hit a Johann or Johannes somewhere. And then she had another name too. All the migrant labourers flooding into the goldfields called the place Egoli. The place of gold, son. The place of gold.
So what was it like living here back then?
Hard, son. Very hard. Of course, as time passed, the tents disappeared and people began to build houses, offices and shops. But still, the people poured into town. The ox wagons and horses filled the dusty streets with traffic. The bars and hotels were full of miners spending their earnings on wine, women and song. It was mostly men, son, living rough and working in extremely dangerous conditions. And over all of it, the thump, thump, thump of the stamp mills crushing rock could be heard all day and all night. Nobody had dug that deep before. Nobody had the skills. And it was every prospector for himself, every claim being worked independently. To get the gold at first, they used picks and shovels, digging out the surface ore from deep trenches, zigzagging across the stony ground. Then the trenches were stepped as they went deeper and deeper into the sea. This was the beginnings of the first real deep-level mining. Of course, they quickly realized that all this new equipment and all the extra workers mining to depths never reached before would cost a whole lot more money. Syndicates became the only answer, and that created wheeler dealing on a grand scale. For a while, the main activity was just a frantic buying and selling of claims, while the actual mining and the miners had to wait for the wagon trains to haul the machinery up from the railhead at Kimberley. Now, the people who had the real expertise and the real money were the owners of the big diamond companies, already established over in Kimberley. Companies headed by men like Cecil John Rhodes, Alfred Boyd, Barney Bernardo, Abe Bailey, and Sammy Marks. These men became known as the Rand Lords, and all the money they made them powerful and bought them political influence. Built them beautiful homes, mansions on the ridge overlooking town. Some are still standing today. But they were the owners, son. They traded the gold, sold it all over the world. And in 1892, the first train finally steamed into Joburg from the Cape. Communication lines were opening up, adding to the speed of the growth. And as the city grew, so did the rate of gold production. They were getting more and more gold out every month. Today, some of the top gold mines in this country produce up to 20 tons of gold in a year. It was a massive achievement, son. It made South Africa the leading gold producer in the world. Since those early beginnings, we've provided 35% of all the gold ever mined.
That's a pretty cool story.
Wow, thank you, son.
So if I wanted to find out more about this stuff, where would I go?
You go and explore, Take a look around. I'll join you in a minute. It's about time you all take a look around as well. Go and see for yourselves. We have 3 mine house museums. The Old Tavel House, the Dow's House, and the Oosthuizen House. The Gold Pool, and the trip down the mine itself. All still to be experienced. It's time to step back into the past. Enjoy the Gold Reef City experience. See you there.